Welcome to Season 4 of UX Banter, your portal to insightful conversations with design illuminaries. We are back with even more engaging discussions with design leaders, delving into their experiences and inspirations. Get ready for fresh insights as we explore the latest trends and challenges in the industry. With me, your host, Dushyant Kanungo.
This podcast is presented by Galaxy UX Studio and powered by Galaxy Weblinks, an Inc. 5000 organization.
Hello, everyone. This is Dushyant, bringing you one of the most unique episodes or a first time that is happening on our show. We have two guests today. So our first guest today is a leader in applied machine learning with 13 plus years of experience. He has developed and deployed autonomous and machine learning systems across various domains, including aerospace, online advertising, FinTech, and biotechnology. We have another guest joining. She is a designer par excellence, translating complex solutions for everyday users. Currently, as the SVP of AI Products and Engineering at NotCo, he leads a global team in creating sustainable and nutritious plant-based foods using advanced AI systems. And she is the lead UX designer, excelling the vision. Please welcome Aadit Patel and Macarena Zañartu. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dushyant, for having us. How are you?
Doing very well, rather than those fumbles and pronunciations. I'm really sorry about that, but there we are.
Perfect. Thank you so much for having us.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I mean, this is the first time that we have two guests coming to the show, and I'm sure that editor will have a blast in editing this. Okay, so I would like to know your individual journeys and how things got where they are. You are a food scientist. I mean, when we're talking about biotechnology, that is what your organization started off doing. So how was the journey like, and how did you got there, Adit?
Yeah, so my background's pretty varied. I started building robotic systems for aerospace, and I moved into machine learning, and I worked on ad tech, fintech, as you said in my intro, and then I landed at this startup about 5.5 years ago called NotCo, the Not Company for short, where we're trying to apply AI and automated decision making into the food space. So 5+ years ago, I was super curious about generative AI before the pre-chat GPT era, and we're wondering, hey, can we apply generative AI techniques into the world of food formulations to make them better for consumers, right? So can we make them, we started making things plant-based. Initially, that was the whole mission of the company is to make things more sustainable. So we were making products that were sort of mimics of animal-based products like not milk, not mayo, not burger, et cetera. And as soon as we started to scale up and we started building better and better tech, we said, hey, we can actually use this underlying tech to formulate other products in other categories, like in cosmetics or personal care, beauty care. There's this whole class of users called formulators that need help formulating more sustainable products, figuring out which ingredient blends to use, et cetera. So long story short, what we did was, from a core technology perspective, we figured out how to solve a common it works problem very efficiently. And any sort of formula, whether it's your toothpaste or if it's a milk or a burger on the shelf, is a combination of ingredients that undergo a process. So how do we actually figure out which are the best combinations to get you to that final product outcome? So it's been a wild 5.5 years. Yes, we started working with food scientists to answer your question in the early days, and now we're working with sort of all kinds of scientists, from synthetic biology all the way to people working in perfumes. So it's been kind of an immense journey through those 5.5 years.
Amazing. And what about you, Maka?
Well, in my case, my experience has been a little bit different. I've been working most of my career on the very corporate world, specifically in banking, and I've been leading teams in designing apps, and then for a little bit in retail. But I've always followed NotCo. I'm from Chile, and NotCo is a Chilean startup. And I always was so intrigued about how they define themselves as a technology company. And they were popular in Chile because they were selling this plant-based products, and they have this very attractive and interesting brand. But once I started learning about how they were doing things, for me, it became a very interesting place to get into, because they were talking about artificial intelligence, and it wasn't having the fuss that it has right now. This was years ago. So for me, it was a very interesting challenge. And I wanted to come into the startup space and trying to understand how to build experiences that use AI. Seemed like a very interesting challenge, a very difficult challenge, especially like with the whole trusting of the technology and making people like on the not very digitalized industry trusting this new space. So I thought it was a very particular thing that they were doing. So that's how I ended up here. Like eventually, I got the opportunity to join the team. So it's been really, really interesting and very different from what I've done before.
Okay. So as science fiction leads to innovations and invention in science, I think even mobile phones came about because Star Trek had them very visibly on display. And now I can imagine that someday Sunita Williams on the International Space Station can say tea, Earl Grey, and the ingredients would muster something up and 3D print the food they want with the right texture, isn't it? I mean, someday, I mean, I would like to see your technology in a hardware machine with all the ingredients added there, and AI would just synthesize that product right there in a vending machine. What do you say?
Yeah, I think it's not that far from the future. I think it's going to be harder to do it for things like solid foods, obviously, because they have to be cooked and baked and stuff like that. So you need all the machinery there on the space station. But for things like beverages, you can kind of already do that, and that's actually something that we're been thinking about doing is adding a layer of robotics onto our AI tools to actually have this sort of the design build test sort of loop, right? When you're designing apps, but it's the same thing for any other product. This is a physical product. It's a food formula, it's a beverage formulation or a perfume formulation. And how cool would it be if you can have a system that can just use a bunch of machine learning to generate that product design, and then have robotics create it, and then have a human test it and say, hey, actually, I want it a little bit more spicy. And then you go through the loop again and you get there. So I actually don't think it's that far off. I've seen systems with the robotic side of it, especially in that space of perfumes and flavors. And it's just a matter of just getting the robotics into the lab and testing it out. I think we'll actually do something within a year to see how we can make that happen.
So, Maka, think about this. Dried food, it only needs hydration and a microwave. And we are already talking about the voice-based interfaces, which are very prevalent. So I don't think Adit is very far off. And it would be exciting for you, for any one of us to actually see that machine. I mean, vending machines are as common as everywhere in the world. So I don't think that it is.
I love that idea. I like you mention it, and I've been thinking all the time about how people would interact and how interesting it would be to see them react and how they could give feedback. So like what it did say, like understanding what feedback they have for what they're trying and using like a testing method. I think it's very interesting.
All right. So while you guys are into the space, you meet with or deal with people who are not as technical. They come from various backgrounds. You are also dealing with the FDA regulations when it comes to generating food or any item. Especially, there are vast differences between whatever you can sell in US and what are the restriction that comes in EU or other parts of the world. So do you think that the legal process makes it difficult for those formulations or AI takes care of it? And how do you go about it, Adi?
Yeah, I mean, so to answer your first question, yeah, I mean, the hardest part of building this AI technology inside NotCo was to get highly non-technical people to use it, and I'd say more creative minds. So, for example, how do you get a chef to use your AI system, which is a lot of mathematics and linear constraints and nonlinear constraints behind the scene? Actually, that's one of the reasons that when I was looking for a UX manager, I hired Maka because she had this sort of innate ability to be able to kind of communicate this very, I'd say, statistical, mathematical language to why does this matter for the end user? Why does this matter for the end food product, for regulations, et cetera. And she's done a phenomenal job, I would say, inside NotCo with kind of closing the gap between the AI fundamental layer, we have a whole team of machine learning engineers across San Francisco and Chile, to the end user layer, right? We're basically putting this AI system in a kitchen and a laboratory and a scale up plant as well. So that's your first question. That's a hard task. And I'm sure Maka can talk way more about it than I can about how you actually start designing for something like that. And then on the second question about the constraints and the regulations, that's exactly what the AI solves for. So one of the things that we did at NotCo was we said, hey, we have this AI system, we can give it a target of what we're trying to look for in terms of we want the taste to be, more umami, whatever, and the texture to be X, Y, and Z. And you can basically give it all these different objectives of what is the functionality and the product qualities of your product that you're trying to create. On top of that, and which is really important, is you can put a set of constraints. So in the aspect of food, a lot of food, you want to have good nutritionals. You just don't want to make something that is sustainable that has no nutritious value to the human. So you want to make sure that it has the right set of macros of proteins, fats, carbs, right? You want to minimize saturated fats, for example. And so you can put all those sort of design constraints as inputs into the platform and start creating. And the AI system will give you suggestions that adhere to those constraints. And that's one of the biggest things we learned was humans, formulators, any human, it doesn't matter, how well versed you are in the space, you're going to have a hard time keeping track of all this sort of dimensionality in your head. So why don't you kind of hand that off to an AI system to allow you to do that? So, we started benchmarking that inside the company. We have a team of formulators across San Francisco, Chile, Buenos Aires, Sao Paulo, Brazil, Mexico City, for example. So we have all this, global distributed workforce that's been using AI systems, and it worked really well. Then what happened was we got approached by a very, very large CPG company and said, hey, you guys are operating in North America and Latin America. Did you guys know in Europe, where we operate, and in the UK, they actually have these EU regulations where we need to formulate our products so that they're more nutritious. Otherwise, there's this thing called Nutri-Score and HFSS, which by regulation, we have to show the consumer that this is very unhealthy right in the front. So it doesn't matter if you have like a little Easter bunny on your packaging, you're going to have to say, this is bad for you, right? The score will be a D- on an A, B, C, D scale. Yeah. So some of the projects that we're getting now from these big companies, like, hey, we see your AI. We basically want to make this taste good, but we need to make it nutritious, which is exactly what the food industry should be doing. Can you help us create that with your tool sets? And so those are some of the bigger projects that we're taking on today. So it manifested a little bit from, first principles thinking of like, how would you design a product? And then we kind of found out by accident that this is a huge problem over in Europe where we weren't even operating because of EU regulation. So we actually started a whole business line doing B2B services with our AI technology. And a lot of companies out of the UK and Europe are now coming to us to kind of help reformulate their existing products to be way more nutritious with the constraints that we can put into the AI.
And Maka, what is bigger challenges that you face when it is, coming to dealing with the people who tend to stay away from technology? Let's say that they are not very primary users of tech or very tech savvy.
It's definitely a challenge in my experience because I used to lead a team in a bank, and I used to do that through a digital transformation. So I had to deal with building trust in the new technologies. Like that is something that I faced before, like seeing the customers from the bank and we were trying to push them to do money transactions through these apps. And it's sort of like the same problem, but we have to face it in a very different way because right now, like, for example, like thinking about what the AI tool that we have, that it's about combinatorics and that Aadit mentioned a little bit about it, but we need to make the users trust the system, not only a system, but also like the process that the system will take them through. Because, for example, when they are trying to figure out how to solve a problem, we're going to give them the system is going to give them a lot of options, and they're going to have to go through those options to learn and make the system learn, like giving them the system back an input about how the solutions actually worked. And then the system will learn and suggest better options. And then making people trust that way of working. It's like adapting not only the way that they're interacting with this new interface, is also a thing about process is users are going to have to build things that they probably think that they're not going to work in order to let the system know what a better recommendation will be. And the way to do that, in our case, like it's been doing a lot of validations, of course, like teaching and being very like explaining how the AI system works, the AI model works behind the scenes. Like that is very important for a user, especially because they are scientifics and they need to understand why the decisions are being, how the decisions are being made behind the scenes. Like that is a very important thing. So for example, that is one of the things that we do a lot. Like we teach them how to use this. We do a lot of validations. And then there's like other types of AI tools that we also have. Like we do use generative AI. And one of the things that happens with generative AI is that,
Yes, please
I'm
go on.
sorry, I thought it was,
No, that's perfectly fine.
well, I was talking about generative AI. So right now, generative AI is very big, right? Like everybody is implementing in their digital tools. They're using this chatbots, like this whole sort of like new technology was available for everybody that was building this digital products and starting using this. But one of the things that like we've been thinking about is how to actually use this technology in the best way to solve the actual problems that our users have. Like chats maybe not the only way to solve and use this technology to give useful and valuable solutions for the problems that we're trying to solve. And we've been doing a lot of user research like that has been, of course, that's always important when you're building any digital platform, understanding why you're doing it and what your user needs. But in our case, like something that's been very important, like again, since we're building solutions for scientists, that food developers that are looking, for example, for looking for replacement for ingredients or knowing how to start a new project when they're not very familiar with the type of product that they're going to be developing. We're trying to make solutions through this technology, and that has been like interesting to see, like using how using generative AI sometimes all yours.
One thing kind of back to the question about like how we got the users involved. One mistake we made, I would say in the beginning, was we hired someone to do this sort of change management of how do you get these users to use AI tools from a very sort of outdated like PMO project management perspective, where they were doing like a Six Sigma. You know, do you remember Six Sigma, Dushyant? Like back in the day, it's like they had this whole tool belt of change management. So it was the worst thing. It was the worst experience because basically what we had was like we had a highly functioning AI team, we had a highly functioning R&D and culinary team, right? And you basically put this Six Sigma process right in the middle, and it's like these two wheels just came to a complete halt. And so this whole thing around change management, like this very old school traditional way, obviously was never going to work. So Maka and her team were able to step in and just like do some very relevant things, which was, hey, instead of having all these processes around how to best use AI in the company, we're going to put on something called user nights, which I'm sure a lot of companies do. And it's just going to be over beers and pizza. And you're going to complain all you want about the AI. And I'll tell you if you're right or wrong about it. And those sessions started becoming so popular. And Maka, you can feel free to talk about it. But I remember the first time Maka put that on with her team, it was almost like a little bit of a renaissance. It's like, oh, there's, you know, one of the like realizations was like, oh, there's humans behind the AI making the AI. It wasn't like, oh, there's just like this thing that I have to
Teaching
interact
us
with.
how to cook. It's not the
Yes,
telling you.
exactly. Like there, we can actually provide feedback to the people that make it. Like, I don't know why it was such a renaissance for people, but I think it was we had such a negative way to do change management before that we had a UX led way to do change management. And the sort of feedback cycle that we got through the UX approach helped us accelerate way more, right? To get much better feedback, understand from a first principles perspective, like what problems are you guys trying to solve? Oh, this nutritional constraint, blah, blah, blah. And we could design for it, those kind of things. So I think that for us, that was really revolutionary to provide the user voice, not just to the app layer, but actually all the way fundamentally to the AI layer, so we could actually make changes on the AI side.
So to take this conversation about 15 years back, I think, well, 10 years, 2013, 11, So I was in UK working for this agency, and we had this project from Jamie Oliver, the chef. And he has a chain of restaurants across UK and in Europe. I'm not sure if they have any presence in the US. Now, the challenge was the food that he prepared, he cannot be present everywhere. So you go to a Jamie Oliver restaurant, you expect the food to look the same as you have seen on the TV, or if it is in the photographs, because one of the parts is the big deal with even in the Master Chef is the presentation, that what is in the end is on your table. So they came up with the solution that let's put some digital display in the kitchen. And so people can actually go and browse and see how it actually should look, and the presentation should be prepared accordingly. Now, easier said than done, right? I mean, when the entire application was built in, we realized that the first challenge is the hands are not clean, so they cannot operate a mouse or a keyboard. And if multiple people are using it, there's a big chance of germination, or the sweet tasting savory and all that. So it has to be some sort of touch function, but not exactly touch. So they have to use, say, maybe knuckles, or there was another touch tool that they were trying to give everybody as pens. So even if it gets dirty, it is on their apron. So they just put it back and do the touch. And the another issue was that even the menus get updated. You have to upload the right pictures from somewhere. And I think that was a smart way of managing, with installing multiple iPads on each station of, wherever the food was going out. And it ran successfully. I think at that time, last I heard, it was about 4 years they were using the same way of delivery. But now imagining that if even computer vision, if you built in, it can tell you that, you missed a spot. And that's how food can be delivered, right?
I mean, I would say, yeah, but like, I think at the same time, when we talk about AI in food, and I'm at like conferences or whatever, I also get a lot of feedback. It's like, do we want to be putting AI in food? And I think there's like just this huge misunderstanding of what it means, because I think obviously food needs to have a human element to it. It's one of the most
Always.
human things ever, right? And so for us, our vision has never been that, the AI will, I think the AI can do the hard stuff, it can be it can do the hard stuff, like the constraints and thinking in like all these high dimensions. It can be a really great assistant for creativity. But what, especially at NotCo, what one thing I've learned was, if you pair up really good AI systems with really creative, special minds and people, you get crazy outcomes. And so,
Sorry.
yeah, I can
When
put.
you spoke, like a couple of months ago, you told me something about AI hallucinations, where it was recommending food that you weren't thinking that possible, the ingredients. And when it
Yeah,
was together, it was something really delicious. So can you tell us more about that?
yeah, exactly. So that's exactly what I was gonna go into. But you have these sort of creative minds that are using the AI, right? They're basically seeing suggestions from the AI, and I love them because they look at things very differently, and they don't adhere to preconceived biases that maybe most people do. So, for example, we have a test kitchen here in San Francisco with about half a dozen chefs from really great restaurants that are working at NotCo under the AI umbrella, under our AI team, and they'll see this, these they'll work with Giuseppe to kind of figure out these new formulations, and some of them just make no sense. Like if you or I were to look at them, I was like, there's no way this is going to work to recreate the aspect of milk or the flavor of milk. Okay. But I love these guys because they will take a look at that and say, hey, why not? That's the motto of our company. Why not? Why don't we try this? And so early in the company, for example, we had the system suggest pineapple and cabbage to replicate the flavor of milk. You and I might look at that as like, that's disgusting. But these guys found a way to basically distill the essence of cabbage in a cabbage juice format, pineapple, mix it together and figure out the concentrations. And they tried it and they're like, this kind of tastes like milk. And that went all the way up into our flagship product. So Not Milk, that sold globally, we're in partnership with Starbucks all around Latin America, has pineapple and cabbage in it. And that's one example that came from hallucination. Our chicken has tomato and strawberry that makes it taste like chicken. And in this case, we had a more flavor specific user taking a look at that, and it was the middle of COVID. It was like a eureka moment. They were like, hey, you're not going to believe this. We didn't believe it, but we tried these weird suggestions from your AI and it worked and actually helped us save costs a little bit. And literally in the middle of COVID, they called our head of R&D down to be like, you need to try this because it's weird, but it works. And everyone was kind of in disbelief. So,
Yeah.
I love those initial stories, how AI sort of, AI was there. You could call it a hallucination, but the way that I like to describe it is Schrodinger's cat, right? It's a loose analogy, but you don't know in Schrodinger's cat if the cat is alive or dead. It's in a quantum state of both, and they're superimposed. But I somewhat feel like hallucinations from AI are similar. Like, do you know if the AI is actually telling you the truth of like some new novel combination that has just never been explored before? Because there's so many combinations out there, or is it just garbage? You're never going to know until you open the box and look into it. You're never going to know until you actually produce that or try that in the kitchen. So this is like the spirit of NotCo. Like, we can have these AI systems, and instead of getting like a 0.01% hit rate or whatever the probabilities are, you can get like a 5% hit rate, which may not sound great, but in the vast universe of things that you could create, pairing this AI up with really creative people like chefs helps you get those wins. So the long story short, that's not what we ended up doing with this. Was systematizing it. We have a program called Giuseppe Bites with the Y, where the chefs will actually use different systems, concept generation plus the formula generation systems in-house. And then we'll create all these random dishes, and then we'll actually test taste them inside our office and say which ones we like, the willingness to buy, et cetera. So we actually have this bottom-up generative AI approach to creating all these new crazy concepts and products. And we've showed some of those to big companies that we're partnering with, and they're like, holy crap, we would have never thought about this in a million years. And I think that's the value generation of AI these days.
Value generation is, so I can see it can replicate it by a camera. I can hear there is a microphone. I can talk, there is an speaker, which is built in the system. Touch, I can understand that at a certain level, the sensory trackpads and things are there. But two things which I still believe are very, very humane, or say not computer, it's very bio, the senses of taste and smell. I think those are the two things that I believe that how would you teach a computer that how does it taste like or how does it smell like? That part I think is a bit scary, don't you think?
I mean, I don't think it's scary because we've done it. And it's less about, it is a little bit about, teaching about how to taste and smell. But once again, when you're building AI systems, it's about going down to fundamentals and first principles, right? What's the task that needs to be solved? I want to create a formula that people love, that need to come from natural raw materials that are sustainable. That's essentially the end goal for any product that we're trying to create, right? So we want to create things that people love that are coming from natural and sustainable sources. And if you don't have AI to do that, you're going to take months and months or years and years to do that. If you have AI and you can teach the AI fundamentals, flavor comes from volatile molecules, or these small molecules that appear in nature all over the world, from flowers, from plants, from different sources, you name it. The whole fragrance industry knows about this. Those molecules bind with one of or several over 400 olfactory receptors in your nose and mouth. But can we teach the AI the structure of the molecule and then map that to a sensory output? Fundamentals, first principles, right? So we can start there and then build AI on top of that and say, okay, now I want to solve this more complex task. How would I do that? How would I shift the inputs to get to what I want as a really great tasting product that comes from natural sources, that's sustainable? And then we create, right? At the end of the day, it's a tool to help creators create, the creators being chefs, food scientists, food formulators, et cetera, with the byproduct effect of, hey, all these ingredients are going to be more sustainable than if you had just done this trial and error, and you get something that people love. So to me, it's not scary. To me, you're actually solving a material problem of people want to eat things that taste good. It's a hedonic pleasure. People say they care about the environment, but if something is a little bit more expensive and it's better for the environment and something is a little bit cheaper, people are going to pick the cheaper one at scale. So how can you get the thing? How can you get the premiums in the thing that's more sustainable? It has to have a better value proposition, whether that's functionality, taste, hedonic, whatever. How can AI help tap into that functionality and that hedonic pleasure while creating a superior sustainable product. That's the end goal, and that's kind of how we designed our system. So if we can design a system that does those things fundamentally, then I think you're actually solving a pretty big macro problem, which is to move more sustainable products into the hands of consumers that they want to eat and are not just forced to eat because they feel guilty that they have to be more sustainable, because no one likes to feel guilty anymore. So
Oh.
no, I don't think it's scary to answer your question.
So Maka, for you, how, I'm not asking that the opposite question, I'm asking, how similar was the experience of designing this application for you with the other applications that you did, for example, banking? What are the similarities that you can actually point out?
Besides the fact that you need to push users to use something that they're not comfortable using, I think that like the fact of you, first of all, adding some value like on the experience, like regarding the alternative, right? Like if you, because in the case of the bank, for example, we had to promote the use of the app instead of users going physically to the bank and then, or using the website, for example. We were pushing them to adopt the technology. And in this case, it hasn't been different. Like we've been moving this kind of users to use a technology that it's new to them. They haven't used any similar things in the past. So it's about like an onboarding process. Like how do you do that in a way that makes sense for the kind of users that you have? And how do you build the trust? Like how do you show them the value proposition that you want them to see and to have if they're not willing to try it, like, or if it's hard for them to adopt it, right? So I would say process are different because they were different kind of users, like doing, but it's like still like an interesting case of comparison. But definitely the way that we solve it, like between the bank and right now, it's different, the way that we tackle it, but definitely like goes through that world. Like it's adopting the technology in this like
Building
new world
trust
of
and
opportunity.
making sure that whatever decision they are making, it is actually something which is feasible for them. Because I think the trust factor that you just spoke about, making sure that people believe what is being built, what is being offered. I've seen multiple people tried in the past that they can actually enter in a mobile app that what raw material they have, ingredients they have at home, and the app can recommend that what can they cook. Do you see yourself placing out a consumer app with your tech? It is already there. I mean, I can tell you that I have sugar, I have salt, I have this, that, and I can just simply say, what can I cook in like 10 minutes? And the system should tell me.
I think that is a great idea. I'd say that in that case, because of the like tech adoption wouldn't be as hard. I think that that is a very, I guess like a lot of people like don't know what to cook, or they like, we all struggle like with deciding what to cook for lunch or dinner, and it takes time, and nobody wants to spend 2 hours in the kitchen when you have a full-time job and just want to solve a problem fast. So I actually like that solution. I think it's pretty interesting to
Two
see
is
that
that
happen. I'm wondering if nobody else does it right now. Like
it
probably
is
there is.
I think there's companies that do that. I think even like
how they are.
ChatGPT can do that these days, right? Like you just take a picture
Oh,
and ask it. I'm not sure
yeah.
how good the recommendations are, but I mean, you get, maybe it's a hallucination. I don't know. You got to try to figure out if it tastes good. We did. I don't know if Maka was before you joined or not. We did have an initiative that we didn't end up going through to do something with Dushanta saying this was pre-Chat GPT era, but to create cocktails. So, and I think that's a little bit more fun, or obviously, right, and a little bit less energy. Which is, hey, I have all these like fruits and vegetables, and obviously these different liquors. Like, what are some fun, unique combinations? Because once again, when we start talking about first principles and stuff that NotCo can do, that for example ChatGPT can't do, we have data on sensory, on ingredients, on molecules that we have from our labs. So like, could we take kind of the fundamentals of what we've built and turn that into consumer application that no other company could do? So we were thinking, as I was talking in the beginning of the podcast about beverages being a little bit of an easier space to kind of use robotics, right? Same thing. Can we do something with like beverages, alcoholic mocktails, whatever, by adding a carrot and a pineapple and whatever, right, into this little elixir. So we never did it, but I think Maka, it could be fun. We should think about that.
Imagine.
Definitely. It
I
was like pretty me joining NotCo.
After Maca joined, we're all business. Just kidding.
All right. So imagine that I download the app and it asks me that what kind of food I would like to, generally cook. I say I cook Indian and Italian, and it will tell me that what are the essential ingredients that you must have before requesting Italian. So I say, yeah, I have that. And 3 days later, I say I have macaroni and I have some curry powder. What do you recommend me that, should be cooked? And I get a curry flavored pasta just ready with Italian food with Indian seasonings.
Yeah, I think totally doable with today's technology, 100%.
All right. So with that, I'm going to jump to my rapid fire questions. This has been one crazy conversation where we are talking to different aspects of, well, deep tech and deep UX. So can we begin?
Sure.
Sure.
Who's first?
Maca can go first.
ahead.
I'll
All
choose
right.
Maca to go first. Yeah.
All right. So, Maka,
Yes. Tell me.
the worst part about being part of NetCo.
Oh God. What is the worst part? Sometimes you have to taste things that aren't delicious. Like you have to
Uh,
taste also the field of experiments. That's not fun.
so most amazing thing that you have tasted.
The most amazing?
Huh?
Ooh, definitely. I've tried this corn dogs that are made with not hot dogs. They're delicious. And that's like my favorite thing that I've tried here. And they have like this Doritos, like crunchy thing on the outside. Like so perfect.
And
I love
what is it that you can just whip up at like 3 a.m. when you are feeling snackish?
Oh, 3 a.m. Definitely like I'm just a big no, I don't know if I can I don't know if I get that hungry at 3 a.m. But if I like do get very hungry, I'll definitely go and have like if I have chocolate in my house, like that's what I'm going to go for.
All right.
Yes. Have a
So
sweet tooth.
sunrise or sunsets?
Sorry, what was it?
Sunrise or sunsets?
Oh, sunset. Yeah.
Your favorite book?
Oh, that's a good one. That I've read lately. Well, no, this one actually. La sombra del viento. I don't know the name in English, but
You
that
can
one.
translate.
What?
You can translate the title.
La sombra del viento would be the shadow of the wind, but I don't know if it's the same name in English. It's
So
written in
it
Spanish. But beautiful
sounds
book.
interesting.
It's
Your movies, favorite one?
I think my favorite movie is Jurassic Park.
Your favorite holiday destination?
I think like I love cities and I love New York, and probably a lot of people are going to think that I'm crazy because that's not like a relaxing holiday destination, but definitely a place that I love to go for holidays. Yeah.
New York.
New York City.
I
Yes.
loved it. Last time I was there with about 3 friends who joined me in Central Park. One of them had a car and we drove around the city all evening and ended up at Times Square at like 2 a.m. And I think it was one of the best memories of me in the US, my favorite memory. And I think that actually makes it very special. If you know, it was my first time in the city and having that bunch, and then we were just, going on a Staten Island ferry, watching the Statue of Liberty that took me to Wall Street and all that. So it was quite an experience. So I'm completely in sync with you when you say New York.
I mean,
It's definitely top up there.
yeah.
All right, now moving on to Adi.
Yes. Good job, Maca, by the way. I don't know if you get an award or something, but that was great.
I
Yeah.
could.
So Adi, what can you cook?
I can cook milk and cereal and eggs. Not that good.
Definitely experimentation. I mean, I can give a point for you on that. What is the best thing that you have tasted out of your product?
It's experimental stuff. So the chefs, last time I was in Chile, they had me try a sake made from a coastal seaweed from Chile. Very local, super distilled, very clean, amazing thing. The most amazing thing I've ever tried.
You haven't tried the corn dog yet.
I have never tried the corn dog, but I think this would beat the corn dog. Yes, so it's a sake. It's a sake that our chefs made using some of our AI from local sources in Chile. Really good.
All right. Something that actually make you throw up after you tasted it.
Ah, hmm. That's a good question. I don't think I've never gotten that bad of a reflex, but I did try. I did try. It was the early days of baking chicken, and all I can say is we hadn't figured it out yet.
That's honesty. One
But I
over.
would say my favorite not product is now not chicken. So the team did an excellent job of fixing that one.
All right, all right. I 100% in sync with you. So, in your opinion, because everything is now turning into AI, the worst AI
Yeah.
product that you have seen, overhyped.
Oh God. I think it would be some of those, what's it called? Like I don't know who's going to see this, but like those pins, like the rabbit or the humane pin or whatever, where it hopefully the tech gets better, but it was just like a small hardware layer around Chat GPT at an
Yeah.
insane price point, and I think it had no sustained value propositions, especially if all the phone suppliers are going to put AI directly into the phone. So I just don't think it was really well thought out about from like a user experience what that product was going to even be.
I think Rabbit could be useful for people with, who have disabilities. I mean, they
Yeah,
are not very much touch capacity, but I think that pen that was advertised as designed from, people who designed iPhone, I think that was really, really overhyped. And internet is full of bad reviews that how
yeah.
can you actually, put your money into it? Okay, so one more thing that I have, if you have to redo the whole thing that you're doing right now, how long
Mhm.
will it take? And do you think that this is the same product that you will end up with? Yes, no.
I think parts of the system, yes, it would be very similar. And I think the generative AI part would be different. So what I mean by that is we have a part that's non-generative AI, and I think it would have been almost exactly the same, because if you understand the first principles of it, you kind of get to the same conclusions if you're thinking about the right way. And then the generative AI part, I'm glad that we started NotCo pre-chat GPT, because we would have been so biased with LLMs and all that kind of stuff. But what we were able to figure out before chat GPT about what works, what doesn't work, how to think about things was a blessing. Because I think, and I'll just kind of say this, I know it's supposed to be rapid fire, but I think it's somewhat of a disadvantage for companies doing AI today just to start with like a foundational model of LLM if they're going to do a very specific domain problem, because they'll think the best baseline is the LLM, and then you fine tune the LLM where you can build a smaller model with a different architecture that can actually be outperforming that if you know what the problem to solve is. And I'll
Very,
die on this hill forever. But yeah, I think it helped us a lot that we started before ChatGPT came out.
I think the first focus should be on the problem and the solution, and
Exactly.
then think about the tech, that how that tech can be incorporated. And I think something similar happened with blockchain, to say the least, because the technology came first, and now people are still figuring out what problem to solve with this. You
Yes, you
have.
can't just you can't just put an application on top of technology and say, okay, problem solved. You need to understand the problem. So yeah, 100% agree with you.
All right, sunrise or sunsets,
Sunrise.
books or movies?
Favorite book recently, Thinking Fast and Slow. It took me forever to read that one, but so much practical advice. Movie, I'm also going to just say Jurassic Park.
It's a great one.
It's a
It's
good movie.
Yeah, it was amazing. What is the first thing what's the first app that you open in the morning?
Superhuman email app. Not proud to say that.
Mine automatically unlocks WhatsApp. You just
Amazing.
All right. With that, coming back, I think you both did tremendously well. I do not have any gift hamper to give, but well, yet. But let's be hopeful, because I really would like to taste the food if it is available. Any of your the confectioneries available in India, I would definitely like to buy, or next time I'm in the US, I would ask for recommendation, and definitely would love to try that hot dog and corn dog. So I mean, it must be quite different, right? I mean, if I'm trying to be on a diet to lose some weight, I think living in that kitchen or being around NotCo is not recommended, do you think? Or uh, your chef would
It's
try
too
to make
hard.
I think
It's
everything is in balance. And sometimes you got to spit things out, like there's spit cups, like when you go wine tasting. I don't think we do that. That's really unsanitary. But yeah, you don't have to eat huge portions of things. You just try things every now and then.
So we were talking about one thing that was trust. Second thing was building the product and solution first, and then thinking about AI. But on the other hand, the R&D part of it. I mean, you are doing research to make food more nutritional, more sustainable, more locally sourced, or something that has little to no impact on the environment. So R&D gets, the AI supports research and development of such food and other parts of future deliverables or consumer goods as we are talking about. So, how do you think that scientists in the future or, at the moment can leverage with research with AI tools and techniques?
Yeah, that's a great question. And actually kind of exactly where we're going on with the roadmap right now, where we think the future of food needs to be not just nutritious, but it needs to have some functionality that is helpful and backed up by potential claims. So we have a lot of our R&D teams working on kind of core fundamental sciences. And what I mean by that is we're understanding in these 300,000 plus species of plants what they're made of in terms of small molecules called metabolites, which can trigger different things in your body, right? A lot of words, but we have equipment that can help analyze what's in these different plant-based molecules. We have neural networks that can look at structures of molecules and relate them to functionalities. And then we have other sort of tool sets for our science users that help them, ingest a bunch of scientific literature to parse through it much faster, relate it to the aspects they're working on. And then one of my favorite systems, and I'll get killed saying on this with my team, is an application called Synthesis, which basically puts any of your experiments in the lab on autopilot. So if you're trying to look for an optimal blend of natural ingredients for some functionality, like we've been doing inside NotCo, you can create like a test to figure out how to measure that functionality, and then basically do the design build test cycle using an AI to basically guide you there in a much shorter time frame than you would have done by trial and error. And so this is a pivotal part of our stack. And so what we're building that into now is saying, hey, we were using this for food before. How can we use this AI system and kind of pivot it to help more core fundamental scientists be better at doing their wet lab experiments? How can we build an AI tool that's a co-pilot for people doing this really cool fundamental science that has the impact to potentially change the world? So it's a big ambitious. We have a really great team that's working on it, but that's what motivates me working at NotCo. There's food, and we can talk about hot dogs and corn dogs and whatever, but I think there's this huge avenue that's opening up of, hey, we have this core AI, and there's this tangential problem about health, and how can food be a benefactor in health? And that's what we're unlocking today with our core R&D and our AI roadmap.
Amazing. That sounds not just fantastic, but something that we should be looking ahead and forward to. So that's Dobby, my dog.
We also looked into pet food, by the way, for a little bit.
Yeah, to keep healthy because I'm not sure what the hell am I feeding him. So, and how does it taste like? I mean, you look at dog food, it says enhanced taste, but you have no idea how does it taste like and why does he eat it. Okay, on the same note, Maka, I mean, we have been designing AI applications ourselves at Galaxy Studio, and sometimes it becomes even challenging for us to push the boundaries because clients do come and ask like, what else I can add here? What new feature that you can recommend? And as a designer, I have my own limits. The team has, they only have seen the AI's capabilities as it is shown to them. But when you experience it firsthand, do you think that has been some challenge or issues in understanding full scope of what can be done and delivered?
Definitely. So since I joined NotCo, something that has been very interesting is the way that we work together collaboratively with the machine learning engineers. And something that we've done in the early days when I joined was, first of all, since that's a team that does a lot of research and they're working on these algorithms, like there's this hypothesis that they can actually solve a relevant issue with the things that they're researching, right? Like with the models that they're building. But there's this whole validation process we do when we're in that stage that, first of all, are we actually solving a relevant problem that is important with that? Then when we're building this experience, like we're thinking and assuming that the users are going to have certain input, right? To get into this AI model that it's being built and designed. So there's a whole validation of the flow, and that actually the information that we put in front of the users is actually something that is going to be useful and something that they can use to troubleshoot their processes and things like that. So it's been interesting to work on that framework to understand what we're actually building adds value in the algorithm perspective and in that context. And that is something that I faced only working directly with AI and within an AI team in comparison of the other experience that I have.
It is quite understandable. Now tell me, if I would like to taste one of these concoctions that your team makes, where can I find the recipes? And I definitely would like to try them in my own kitchen.
Yeah, so I mean, in the US, we're doing a joint venture with Kraft Heinz, which is it's a large CPG player. So their entire plant-based portfolio is done through NotCo. So iconic products like Kraft mac and cheese. We have a plant-based version that's actually it's superior, I think, when we did some taste testings. And so you can get that at any store. We also have like Oscar Mayer wiener that's plant-based that we did with Kraft Heinz, and that's out as well. And then we have really wide sort of distribution inside Latin America, where our company is based out of. So if you go to basically any Starbucks in Latin America, you can order a not latte and try our not milk products there. So we have a thriving CPG business across Latin America. In the US, we have this really material joint venture. It's a third company with Kraft Heinz that has been a fantastic relationship. And then as we continue to expand, we realized, hey, the driving factor for a lot of the growth in areas that we don't want to put down like operations or manufacturing is B2B. How can we leverage our tech to go into Europe, like I was telling you about, right? How can we have products that are I wish I could tell you the brands, but like, what are these name brand iconic products that you have probably seen every single day? And if I told you, you would know exactly what I'm talking about. You're going to see
that you will put them on your website on notco.com.
We'll put them on the website when they're done. But yeah, I think, some products I think will be the Intel inside of it, using our tech to help create. And then, behind the scenes, I can tell you, hey, try this one. This is something that we worked on. And then some were front of pack, like with Kraft Heinz, you'll see the NotCo brand and the Kraft brand together on the pack. So different models for different geographies. But our goal is to be global with the impact that we end up creating.
So what advice would you like to give to the new entrepreneurs who would like to follow the model where there is a product, there is a solution, but if they want to walk into your footsteps, what challenges do you think that they should be really aware about?
I can start, and Michael, feel free to compliment, but I think exactly what you said earlier is, what's the problem you're trying to solve? And I advise a couple of startups, and they fall in love more with their technology rather than the problem that they're solving. And then they get a little bit blindsided, like, hey man, your technology is fancy, but there's no impact you're making to solve a pain point. So I'd say that's one fundamental. And then the second thing is that pain point universal enough where you can make a business out of it? Because if it's not, then great, solve the pain point, but that's a passion project. Like if you want a business, make sure that pain point is universal. So once again, first principles, like what are you trying to solve? Does your technology solve it? If not, you're out of luck. And then second, if your technology does solve it, is there a big enough group of people that need it solved that will pay for it? Go figure that out first before you decide to start a business and make a pitch deck with a bunch of AI buzzwords on it. Otherwise, you're doomed from the very beginning to make a company that is hyped up and has nowhere else to go. So just some practical advice.
Oh, thank you very much. And I think the same thing goes for designers as well. I mean, tend to fall in love with our own creation, and that causes a lot of trouble. Maka, what do you think? I mean, the ego
Definitely.
problem with designers, how hard does
Yeah.
it get?
So I guess the two things that are the most important is, first of all, as you said, like don't fall in love with the thing that you're designing, like put it out there, test it, like iterate on it and accept feedback, and don't wait until something is done in front of your eyes, like because you think it needs to be in a certain level of maturity, because that it's going to be too late to test it, or it's going to be too expensive to change it. So definitely like test early, and like keep having like constant feedback from your users and validating. Very important.
Amazing. Thank you very much for joining us today for this podcast. And I thank you both, Adi and Maka, for taking time and talking about your amazing product and the journey and the experiences that you guys have had.
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you so
the
much,
invitation.
Nishan.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. So, all our listeners, this was one amazing episodes with a lot of takeaways and learnings about technology, about UX, about dealing with people and starting your own business. I know that, this is a very unique way of expressing or even exploring the world of AI, where we are dealing and experimenting with things. But in the end, we actually need to still advocate about the users and the context and the way your product is going to be used in situations and the times when it is going to be used by different set of people. So stay tuned for more learnings on this podcast. We'll be back with another episode. So stay tuned. Please do like, follow, and subscribe. I think this is a new thing that I've started saying, but do that. And see you guys next week. Bye.